I broke the first rule on my third night, and that's when I realized the rules weren't suggestions. They were a survival manual written in someone else's blood. Let me back up. My name is Marcus. I'm 34 years old, and 6 months ago, I was sleeping in my car behind a Planet Fitness, using their bathroom to brush my teeth. Divorce does that sometimes. Takes your house, your savings, and leaves you with a 2009 Honda Civic and a persistent ringing in your ears that the doctor said was stress, but felt like punishment. So when I saw the job posting for a night patrol guard at Hillcrest Business Park, I didn't ask questions. $700 a week, cash, to walk around empty buildings from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.? I would have signed in my own blood if they'd asked. The interview was in a windowless office that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. The man who hired me, Mr. Reeves, though I'm not sure that was his real name, had the kind of face you forget the moment he turns away. Average height, average build, eyes that didn't quite focus on you when he spoke. Simple job, he said, sliding a laminated card across the desk. Walk the perimeter every hour. Check the doors. Note anything unusual in the log. Most importantly, he tapped the card with a yellowed fingernail. Follow the rules. All of them. No exceptions. I glanced at the card. There were 7 rules, typed in an old-fashioned font that looked like it came from a typewriter. Never sleep during your shift if you hear your name called. Do not respond. The loading dock door should never be unlocked after midnight if you see someone in a blue maintenance uniform. Do not make eye contact. Count the security cameras on each patrol. There should be exactly 16 if you find wet footprints. Follow them to their source. Never enter Building C between 3 and 4 a.m. Questions? Mr. Reeves asked. I had about a dozen, but I needed the money more than I needed answers. No, sir. Good. You start Monday. If you like stories like this, like the video and subscribe to Dark Signal for more. The business park was exactly what you'd expect. 6 identical gray buildings arranged in a horseshoe around a crack parking lot, illuminated by sodium lights that turned everything the color of old bruises. Building C sat at the far end, slightly set back from the others, its windows darker somehow, like they were painted from the inside. My first night was uneventful. I walked my rounds, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness, my footsteps echoing off concrete and glass. The only sounds were the hum of transformers and the distant rush of the highway. I checked doors, all locked. I counted cameras, 16, as promised. I noted nothing unusual in the leather-bound log they'd left for me in the guard station. A wooden booth barely big enough for a chair and a space heater. By the time dawn broke, I was tired but relieved. Easy money. The second night started the same way. Cool October air, empty parking lot, the same mechanical silence. I was halfway through my third patrol, around 2 a.m., when I noticed the first camera was angled differently. Not by much, maybe 15 degrees, but enough that it was now pointed at Building C instead of the east parking lot. I counted the rest. 16 cameras total. I made a note in the log. Camera 1 repositioned? The rest of the night passed without incident, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me back through those lenses. On the third night, I broke the rule. I didn't mean to. That's important. I'd been awake for almost 4 hours, pacing the same routes, checking the same doors, when I sat down in the guard station to warm my hands against the space heater. The chair was surprisingly comfortable. The orange glow of the heater was hypnotic. I told myself I'd rest my eyes for just a minute. When I opened them, my watch read 3:47 a.m. I'd been asleep for almost 2 hours. The first thing I noticed was the cold. The space heater was off, unplugged. Its cord coiled neatly on the floor, though I could have sworn I'd left it running. The second thing I noticed was the silence. Not the mechanical hum I'd grown used to, but a complete absence of sound, like someone had pressed mute on the world. The third thing I noticed was the figure standing outside Building C. At first, I thought it was a trick of the sodium lights, shadows coalescing into a vaguely human shape. But as I stared, the shape solidified. A man, or something shaped like a man, wearing what looked like a blue maintenance uniform. He wasn't moving, just standing there, facing the building, his posture wrong somehow, like his joints bent at angles that didn't quite match human anatomy. I remembered Rule 4. If you see someone in a blue maintenance uniform, do not make eye contact. But I was already looking, and as I watched, his head began to turn, slowly, mechanically, toward the guard station, toward me. I ducked below the window, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stayed there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the laminated rule card gripped in my sweating hand. When I finally gathered the courage to look again, the figure was gone. I didn't note it in the log. I'm not sure why. Maybe because writing it down would make it real. The fourth night, I arrived to find a new addition to my supplies. A thermos of coffee, still hot, sitting on the chair in the guard station. There was no note, no explanation, just coffee that someone had left for me, in a locked booth, that only I had the key to. I didn't drink it. My first patrol that night, I counted the cameras. 17. I counted again slowly, marking each one in my mind. 17 cameras, one more than there should be. The new one was mounted on Building C, pointed directly at the guard station, its red recording light blinking steadily in the darkness. I made a note in the log. Extra camera installed on Building C. Please advise. When I returned an hour later for my second patrol, I flipped back through the log to see what I'd written. The page was blank, not erased. There were no smudges, no indentations from the pen. Just smooth, unmarked paper, as if I'd never written anything at all. That's when I started to understand that something was very wrong with this place. The fifth night, I heard my name. It was 1:23 a.m. I was walking the north perimeter between buildings A and B when I heard it, faint but clear, carrying across the empty parking lot. Marcus. A woman's voice, familiar in a way that made my chest tight. It sounded like my ex-wife, Sarah, the way she used to say my name when she was still trying to make our marriage work before the drinking and the debts and the lawyers. Marcus, I need help. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to look, to respond. But I kept walking, my hands balled into fists, Rule 2 echoing in my head. If you hear your name called, do not respond. Marcus, please. I'm cold. I walked faster. The voice followed me, growing more desperate, more familiar, pulling at something deep and guilty inside me. Why won't you help me? You never helped me. I made it back to the guard station and locked the door, even though I knew, somehow knew, that locks wouldn't matter to whatever was out there. The voice continued for another 20 minutes, cycling through every person I'd ever failed, ever hurt, ever loved. My ex-wife, my father, my sister who stopped returning my calls, each one begging, pleading, accusing. Then, at exactly 2 a.m., silence. I checked the cameras, all 17 of them, on the small monitor in the guard station. Nothing moved in the parking lot. Nothing stirred between the buildings. But in the feed from the camera pointed at the guard station, the one that shouldn't exist, I could see myself sitting at the desk. Except in the video, I was asleep, my head down on the desk, my shoulders rising and falling with deep breaths. But I was awake. I was looking at the screen. I was watching myself sleep while I was awake. I stopped looking at the monitor after that. The sixth night brought the wet footprints. I found them during my midnight patrol, small puddles of water forming a trail across the parking lot. Each footprint perfectly formed, toes and heels visible in the pooled liquid. They led from the south entrance straight to the loading dock door of Building D. Rule 6, if you find wet footprints, follow them to their source. I stood at the edge of the trail, flashlight in hand, every survival instinct telling me to walk away. But the rules had kept me safe so far, mostly safe, and I was starting to understand that following them wasn't optional. The loading dock door was open, not unlocked, open. The metal rolling door pulled up about 3 feet, just enough for someone to duck under. Rule 3 said it should never be unlocked after midnight. It didn't say anything about it being open. I crouched down and shined my light under the door. The beam illuminated a vast, empty warehouse space, concrete floors stretching into darkness. The wet footprints continued inside, leading deeper into Building D. I squeezed under the door, the metal scraping against my back, and stood up in the warehouse. The air was different here, colder, damper. with a smell like standing water and rust. My flashlight beam seemed weaker somehow, swallowed by the darkness before it could reach the far walls. I followed the footprints. They led me past empty loading pallets, around support columns, deeper into the building. The puddles were getting larger, the footprints more defined. Whoever, or whatever, was making them was getting closer. Then the trail stopped, just ended mid-stride, in the center of the warehouse floor. No body, no person, just one final footprint, larger than the others. The water still rippling as if the foot had just lifted. That's when I heard the breathing. Not my breathing. I'd stopped breathing the moment I saw the ripples. This was something else, slow and wet, coming from directly above me. I looked up and saw nothing but darkness, my flashlight beam disappearing into the void of the warehouse ceiling. But something was there. I could feel it, could hear it breathing, could sense its massive presence hovering in the darkness above me. Patient and ancient and hungry. I didn't run. Running would have been smart. Instead, I carefully backed away, keeping my light pointed upward, watching for any movement in that impenetrable darkness. I moved slowly, deliberately, until I felt the loading dock door against my back. Then I ducked under it and didn't look back until I was locked in the guard station, my hands shaking so badly I could barely write in the log. I wrote, followed footprints as instructed. Loading dock door was open. Investigated. Source unclear. Door now closed and secured. The next morning, when I checked the log before leaving, my entry was still there. But below it, in handwriting that wasn't mine, neat, old-fashioned script that looked like it was written with a fountain pen, someone had added, "Good. You're learning." I should have quit. I know that now. I knew it then, sitting in my car in the Planet Fitness parking lot as the sun came up, my hands still shaking from the night before. But $700 is $700, and the first of the month was coming, and I'd already spent the money in my head. Deposit on a studio apartment, first month's rent, maybe enough left over for actual groceries instead of gas station sandwiches. So I went back for the 7th night. This time, I came prepared. I'd bought energy drinks, a better flashlight, and a small digital recorder. If weird things were happening, I wanted proof. I arrived at 10:45 p.m. and did a thorough check of the guard station before my shift officially started. Everything seemed normal. Coffee thermos on the desk. I'd started drinking it by the 4th night, figuring if they wanted me dead, they had easier ways. Space heater plugged in and working. Logbook open to a fresh page. I started my first patrol at 11 p.m. sharp. I counted cameras, still 17. I checked doors, all locked except the loading dock door of Building D, which stood open exactly 3 feet, just like I found it the night before. I didn't go under it. Rule 6 said to follow the footprints to their source. There were no footprints tonight. At 1:30 a.m., I was walking the east perimeter when I noticed something I'd missed before. There was an 8th building, not a real building, more like the shadow of one, a dark space between buildings B and C where the geometry didn't quite work, where the angles went wrong and created a pocket of deeper darkness that your eyes wanted to slide past. I stopped walking and stared at it, forcing my gaze to focus on that impossible space. And the space stared back. I don't know how else to describe it. The darkness had weight, had presence, had intention. It noticed me noticing it. And in that moment of mutual recognition, I understood that I'd made a terrible mistake. Some things aren't meant to be seen. Some spaces exist specifically in the corner of your vision, and looking directly at them is an invitation. The shadow building rippled, and suddenly it wasn't between buildings B and C anymore. It was behind me. I could feel it, a column of wrong space pressing against my back, and I knew with absolute certainty that if I turned around, if I looked at it directly, something fundamental would break inside my mind. So I did the only thing I could do. I closed my eyes and walked forward, counting my steps, using the memory of the parking lot layout to navigate blind. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. The presence behind me grew stronger, more insistent, and I could hear something now. Not breathing, not footsteps, but a sound like reality tearing, like fabric ripping in slow motion. 10 steps, 15, 20. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in front of the guard station. The shadow building was gone. Or maybe it had never moved. Maybe I'd walked through it. Maybe it existed in all places and no places simultaneously. I didn't put any of this in the log. At 2:47 a.m., I heard the voices again. Not calling my name this time, just talking, conversing. Dozens of overlapping conversations in languages I didn't recognize, and a few I did. They seemed to be coming from Building C, from the dark windows that never reflected the sodium lights properly. I checked my watch. 13 minutes until 3 a.m. 13 minutes until the window closed and Building C became forbidden territory. I should have stayed away. I should have followed the rules. But something in those voices, something in the cadence and rhythm, sounded like they were discussing me, debating me, deciding something about me. I walked to Building C and tried the door. Locked. I walked around to the loading entrance. Also locked. But there was a service door on the east side, half hidden behind a dumpster, and when I tried the handle, it opened smoothly, silently, as if it had been waiting for me. The interior of Building C was wrong from the first step. The hallway stretched too far, longer than the building should have been from the outside. The walls were the right color, institutional beige, but they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and my flashlight beam died after only a few feet. The voices were louder here, clearer. They were coming from above me, from below me, from inside the walls. I could almost make out words, almost understand the conversations, but every time I focused on one voice, it would slip away and another would take its place. I walked deeper into the building. Doors lined both sides of the hallway, each one identical, each one locked. I tried them systematically, working my way down the corridor that shouldn't exist. The air grew colder with each step, and I could see my breath now. White clouds that hung in the air longer than they should, as if even the basic physics of the place were negotiable. I checked my watch. 2:58 a.m. 2 minutes. The voices suddenly stopped. The silence was immediate and total, so complete that I could hear my own heartbeat echoing off the walls. Then, from the far end of the impossible hallway, I heard a single sound, a door clicking open. I should have run. I should have turned around and sprinted back to the guard station and never returned. But I'd come this far, and some sick, curious part of me needed to know what was behind that door. I walked forward. My footsteps made no sound on the floor. My shadow didn't follow me. I could see it on the wall behind me, staying in place even as I moved, as if it had decided this was far enough. The open door led to a room that shouldn't exist. It was vast, cathedral vast, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness and walls so distant they might have been miles away. But somehow, impossibly, this room existed inside Building C, which from the outside was maybe 100 feet square. In the center of the room stood a desk. Behind the desk sat Mr. Reeves, the man who'd hired me, though his face was different now, sharper, more defined, like someone had turned up the contrast on his features. He was writing in a leather-bound book identical to the log in my guard station. He looked up and smiled. "Marcus, you're early." I checked my watch. 3 a.m. exactly. "The rule," I started, "says never enter Building C between 3 and 4 a.m. He finished. "It's now 3 a.m. You're precisely on time. Rules are important, Marcus. Every word matters. What is this place?" My voice sounded small in the vast space, swallowed by distances that shouldn't exist. "A way station," Mr. Reeves said, setting down his pen. "A place between places. We've had a patrol guard for 73 years, ever since the business park was built on top of, well, on top of something that was here before. The buildings are anchors. The rules are bindings. The guard is a witness. A witness to what? To the fact that this place is still here, that the boundaries are holding, that the things that want to slip through haven't slipped through yet." He gestured to the book in front of him. "Every patrol guard we've ever had, their observations are recorded here. Your notes, your experiences, even the entries that disappeared from your log, they're all here. Evidence that someone is watching, that someone knows." I thought about the shadow building, the thing in the warehouse ceiling, the figure in the blue maintenance uniform. And if I stopped watching? Mr. Reeves's smile faded. "The rules were written by the first guard. a man named Thomas Carver, in 1952. He lasted 6 months before he broke too many rules too many times. We found what was left of him in the parking lot on a Tuesday morning. It took us 3 days to identify him from dental records, not because he was burned or decomposed, but because his body had forgotten what shape a human was supposed to be. The pieces were all there, just rearranged, reinterpreted. He stood up, and I noticed for the first time that he cast no shadow, that his footsteps made no sound on the impossible floor. "You're doing well, Marcus. Better than the last guard. He only lasted 2 weeks. The job is yours as long as you want it, as long as you follow the rules. The pay will increase every month you survive. Benefits kick in after 6 months. We take care of our employees. And if I quit, then we'll find someone else. Someone desperate enough, broken enough, empty enough that $700 a week sounds like salvation instead of a sentence." His smile returned. "We always find someone. The world is full of people like you, Marcus. People who've run out of options." He was right, and we both knew it. "You should go," Mr. Reeves said, returning to his seat. "Your patrol isn't finished, and you'll want to be out of Building C before 4 a.m. That rule exists for your protection, not ours." I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "Marcus, the coffee. You've been drinking it, yes?" I nodded. "Good. It helps. Keeps you alert. Keeps you anchored." The last guard stopped drinking it in his second week. Started seeing things that weren't part of the job. Started believing things that weren't true. By the end, we weren't sure if he was patrolling the business park or if the business park was patrolling him. I wanted to ask what that meant, but I was already walking, moving back through the impossible room, back down the hallway that was shorter now, easier to navigate. I emerged from Building C at 3:11 a.m. The service door clicked shut behind me, and when I tried the handle again, it was locked. I finished my patrol in a daze, counting cameras, still 17. Checking doors, all locked except the loading dock, still open 3 feet. Noting nothing unusual in the log because everything was unusual and nothing was unusual anymore. The sun rose at 7:03 a.m. I wrote my final entry in the log. Uneventful night. All quiet. Below my entry, in that neat, old-fashioned script, someone wrote, "Welcome to the team. I've been working night patrol at Hillcrest Business Park for 3 months now. The rules have expanded. There are 13 now, written on a new laminated card that appeared in my guard station in mid-November. I follow them all. I drink the coffee. I count the cameras. I check the doors. I never sleep. The pay increased, like Mr. Reeves promised. I'm making $1,300 a week now. I have an apartment, a new car, a savings account for the first time in years. My ex-wife called last month. Somehow she'd heard I was doing better, wanted to catch up. I didn't call her back. I'm not sure if it was really her, or if it was one of the voices. I've seen the figure in the blue maintenance uniform 4 more times. I know better than to make eye contact now. I've heard my name called at least once a week. I never respond. I've found wet footprints twice more, followed them to their sources. Once to an empty swimming pool that shouldn't exist behind Building F. Once to a door that opened into the night sky. Stars below me instead of above. I don't ask questions anymore. I just follow the rules. Last night, during my 4 a.m. patrol, I saw someone sitting in their car in the parking lot. A woman, maybe 30, with dark circles under her eyes and the kind of exhausted desperation I recognized from my own mirror 6 months ago. She was reading something, probably a job posting, probably calculating if $700 a week was worth whatever it would cost her. I wanted to warn her, wanted to tell her to drive away, to keep looking, to sleep in her car for another month if that's what it took. But I didn't, because I needed her to take the job. Needed someone else to be the witness, the anchor, the fool desperate enough to sign his name on a contract written in invisible ink. Mr. Reeves appeared beside me, though I hadn't heard him approach. He never makes sound when he walks anymore. "Your replacement," he said, nodding toward the woman. "Interview tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'm quitting." "No, Marcus. You're being promoted." Day shift. Better pay. Normal hours. You've earned it. You followed the rules. He handed me a new card, this one with 23 rules. I scanned them quickly. Most were familiar, variations on what I'd already learned. But Rule 1 was different. It said, never tell the night guard the complete truth. I looked at the woman in the car, still reading, still calculating. What should I tell her? I asked. The same thing I told you. Simple job. Follow the rules. All of them. No exceptions. Mr. Reeves smiled, and in the pre-dawn light, his teeth seemed too numerous, too sharp. Welcome to management, Marcus. The woman got out of her car and walked toward the office. She moved like someone carrying the weight of 1,000 bad decisions, someone who'd finally run out of better options, someone exactly like I'd been. I watched her disappear into the building where Mr. Reeves conducted interviews. Somewhere inside, he was sliding a laminated card across a desk, tapping it with a yellowed fingernail, promising her simple work for desperate times. I should have warned her, should have broken the rules one final time and told her the truth. But I didn't, because the rules exist for a reason, because the boundaries need to be maintained, because someone has to witness, someone has to watch, someone has to stand between the world that makes sense and the world that doesn't. And because $1,300 a week is $1,300 a week. I start my new shift, the day shift, next Monday. Normal hours, Mr. Reeves promised. 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'll learn the new rules, follow them precisely, and survive. But sometimes, in the moments between waking and sleeping, I wonder about something Mr. Reeves said during that impossible meeting in Building C. He said the business park was built on top of something that was here before. He said the buildings are anchors. He never said what they were anchoring. Last night, during my final patrol of the evening, I counted the cameras like I always do. There should be 17. There were 18 now. The new one was pointed at the parking lot entrance, positioned perfectly to record everyone who drives in for an interview. I checked the monitor in the guard station. In the feed from that new camera, I could see myself standing in the parking lot, watching. But I wasn't alone. Behind my reflection, barely visible in the sodium lights, stood dozens of figures. Hundreds maybe. All wearing the same security guard uniform I was wearing. All watching the entrance, with the same expression I knew was on my face. All of them waiting for the next desperate soul to sign on the dotted line. I made a note in the log. Camera count anomaly. Recommend investigation. In the morning, I checked the entry. The page was blank. But underneath where my writing should have been, in that neat, old-fashioned script, someone had written a single sentence. There are no cameras. There have never been cameras. You're counting the witnesses. I start my new job on Monday. I'm drinking the coffee right now. And I'm not sure if I'm being promoted or if I've just become permanent.